I think first I would just like to get, you're the police chief of St. Pete PD. When you saw the video when you saw the video and then the corresponding reaction, what was just your initial reaction to seeing that video and the fallout?
Well, when I finally got a chance to review the video, you start looking at, and I'm only seeing, again, I don't have all the evidence, so I'm looking at the same thing that you're looking at. So the first thing I was shocked because there is no police procedure, there's no police tactic that's taught to anyone to do that. He wasn't fighting, he wasn't resisting, he was asking for help. They, as law enforcement officers, should have rendered help at that point.
And can you be more specific? When you say there's nothing that's any police training to do that, what is the that you're referring to?
I'm sorry, you broke up. So here we're not trained that tactic. I've never seen anyone use that tactic when someone is handcuffed and down on the ground, and I can't tell where his knee or his foot, to put something on someone's neck. There's no police tactic that's taught in the police academy. We don't teach it here. I can tell you in Pinellas County, the police chief and the sheriff, we meet once a month, and that's not part of our training. And we would not teach our people that.
And like you said, you're just looking at video that, we've all seen. We essentially have the same amount of information. So I completely understand that. But based off of your assessment then, saying that this was a tactic that is not used in our local area, one that's not taught, what did you think about the chief's decision there to fire the 4 officers involved, and then the mayor's follow-up to say that they should be prosecuted for murder?
Again, I don't have all the evidence, so I give the chief of police there 100% credit. He made a decision right away. He made the right decision right away. And after all the evidence is brought forward to the state attorney's office, they should prosecute if the evidence is there. They took someone's life, period. It just says they. I don't want to put the whole group together. That officer took someone's life. It's up to those other officers that were on the scene. They have a responsibility. No, I'll make it stronger. They have a duty that when they see something wrong, they should react to that.
Yes. And so obviously this happened up in Minnesota, but thanks to cell phone camera footage and social media and national news, we're able to see this news here as well. When you think about our community, seeing an event like this, does it make you think at all about how you and your officers interact with community members on a regular basis?
It does, and that's why I'm having this conversation with you. As you asked me, law enforcement here and throughout the nation, we have done a lot to build community policing. We've done a lot to build trust. This one incident has set us all back. We've all got to go back out to the community, just like I'm talking to you now, explain that we would not tolerate that in our community. And every chief and every sheriff is having the same conversation, trust me, because of what this officer has done. So we got to tell people that's not acceptable and that's not tolerated. Because we got a lot. We, law enforcement, I send out my condolences to that family because it is part of law enforcement. So as a law enforcement officer, I want to apologize to that family because that shouldn't have happened. So we've got to build on that.
And so, like you said, an incident like this sets us back, but what the national discourse around this has been is that it is a string of a larger issue with how the Black community is treated by police officers. As a Black police chief, how do we tackle this issue of mistrust and, in some cases, abuse between police officers and our African American community?
I think it starts with what we keep doing, this dialogue, this conversation. We don't need an incident like this to happen to bring us to the table. We should be at the table every day, every week, talking about how we can make this stronger, how we can build this stronger. Because all this incident does, it does bring up to the point that we've got some issues that we need to address. So we need to continue to build this trust and continue to have these conversations. We can't say it's not going to happen because every time we say it's not going to happen, guess what? It happens somewhere. So we need to look at what are we doing, how are we training our officers, how we're training the community, sit down at the table, and how do we have this dialogue before something like this happens.
And, you know, to get back at it, you are in a unique position. You lead the St. Pete Police Force, and you yourself are also a member of the African American community. Do you feel that your position is one of value, that you have, you know, a role in both communities? Do you utilize your position to better relations in any way?
I have a role in both communities, because both mean equally or both the same to me. You know, when I'm wearing this uniform, people see me differently. The African American community sees me differently. The white community, everybody sees me differently because they see this uniform. But then when I take off this uniform, a lot of people only see me as an African American because they don't know who I am. So I see both sides of it. So it's my job as an African American chief to bring it out. It's my job, if I wasn't police chief, to bring this out. As an African American, it's our job to bring this to the table and say, hey, there are some issues that they need to be addressed. We need to have these conversations. And there are a lot of people willing to sit down and have these conversations. And we got to continue that. We don't need this incident that happened to Mr. Floyd. We need this incident that happens nationwide to say, like your station, let's have these conversations. Let's have these hard conversations. Because every time we think this is not happening, it's happening. So something needs to be addressed.
One of the things that we've seen pop up as the result of this incident with Floyd and the riots and the reaction to his death has been a call to other community members, namely white community members, to be almost allies. And that's something that we've seen throughout history with civil rights. And we had freedom riders and people joining together to say this is not just a fight for the African American community, it should be a fight for all American people to stand with their brothers and sisters. What role do you think that should play, and how important is that to you to recognize that, you know, this is not something that can be done alone between police and African Americans? It's all of us needing to work together.
I think, I hate to say it, but Mr. Floyd's death, look at that video and say, look, it is happening. Because I can tell you right now, a lot of police officers that I've spoken to, they look at that and they say there's no justification for that. So you got police officers saying that. You should have the average citizen looking at that and saying there was no justification for that. Matter of fact, we were just talking, it was kind of funny, we were just having this conversation because we are having more relationships with different communities, the white community with the COVID-19, social distancing. So now we're making more of that contact and like, well, why are you bothering me? What am I doing wrong? They're feeling what we would do in all the communities. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's time for that conversation.
And one of the investments, to kind of get back to what we talked about yesterday, one of the investments that you guys are going to be making and have been trying to make for a couple of years now is the investment in body cameras. How, you know, tell me a little bit about when you guys will be running out that pilot program and what your hope is in terms of the asset it will add to your police department.
And like I told you yesterday, the cameras are going to be the test is going to be rolling out next week, and it's not the end all be all. All it does is add on to another level of trust that can show. A good example, when I tell people, those officers, guess what? They had on body cameras. It didn't change what they were doing because it starts within the organization. It starts with the community. So, okay, he had on a body camera. Guess what? Mr. Floyd's dead. It didn't change his action. So the body cameras will add that second layer, but it comes down to training and building relationship. A lot of people go, oh, and you know what? Let's get a body camera. That body camera didn't save Mr. Floyd. Did it? No. So until we, at law enforcement, and we are doing that, and at a community, and like you said, Black, white, Latino, we all get together and have this hard conversation saying we need to look at this, we're not going to go anywhere.
So, and yeah, to kind of wrap it up, like maybe the first part of my question, what are the things that you guys actively do to stay involved in the community and to build that trust between the community and the police department?
So we do a lot of things, and thanks to the mayor. First, we have a program called, when I first came here, we talked about this. We built the Park, Walk, and Talk. And every officer, and this, I should rephrase that, every officer that wears a uniform, he or she is responsible for 1 hour a week to get out of their car and just what it says, park, walk, and talk. Get in their car and talk to you, introduce themselves to you so you can get to know each other one-on-one. Not when you've called the police department because you have a problem. I want to know who you are. I want to know you who are as a person. So that's one program we have in. The next program we have in is before our new officers go out on the road, we have a competency where they meet with the communities, the minority community leaders, and they have that conversation you and I are talking about, that you may have come from a neighborhood that's never been in an African-American community, or you never had to deal with Latinos or a different culture. You're going to sit down and you're going to learn about those cultures. Everybody is biased. It's just, we all have our little bias, and it's to recognize that and understand when you're wearing this uniform that you're there to protect everyone, no matter who they are. So that's the other part. And the other thing is what we do constantly. We have good sponsors. We do our Park Walk and Talk. We do our Park Walk and Cheer. We do our Christmas program. So we're always giving to the community, because my biggest thing is I don't want people to run from the badge. I want the community to run to the badge for that help. And that's what we have to do.
And you already spoke on this, but it is obviously an important point to make. When something like this happens all the way up in Minnesota, but a very visible, video documented loss of life potentially at the hands of a police officer, potentially, obviously, we don't have the coroner's report and exactly what happened. But when the nation has access to a case like this and video like this, what disservice does that do to police forces across the country?
So that one officer incident put us all back. Everything that we worked for, all law enforcement agencies, we have to go back now and address it, because there's going to be some issues. People, hey, this officer was rude to me, this is that. This happens all the time in my community. It may not happen all the time in your community, and we need to look at that. So this one incident that just brings to light that there are still some bad officers out there, and we as law enforcement have got to keep an eye on that. We got to keep training our people and working on this issue and talking to the community. But this just sets us all back. Now we built something, but we help the naysayers, how we say that. We help those 1%ers that say, oh, the cops are this. We've got to bring it, because when people see that, when you see that video, it's disturbing. And then when someone says, hey, this happened to me the other day, then people tend to believe that is going on. And I'm not going to tell you nationwide that's going on, because it isn't. But we've got to build that trust. And it's going to be hard, because that officer in that one day, in that 5 minutes, he took all that away from all of us.